Warning, graphic footage. A white police officer has been convicted of murdering a black teenager after firing 16 bullets into him during a confrontation. The death of Laquan McDonald in 2014 triggered months of protests in Chicago, and America's third largest city is braced for more trouble after the verdict. Officer Jason Van Dyke's conviction is the first time in 50 years that a Chicago police officer has been convicted of murder for an on-duty death. He repeatedly fired at 17-year-old Laquan as the knife-wielding teen appeared to be walking away from officers. The killing was caught on camera and showed officers surround Laquan on a city street in October 2014. Witness Rudy Barillas said he called police after the teenager tried to stab him when he caught him breaking into vehicles. Police said they arrived, and he was slashing car tires and a standoff ensued. They were waiting for someone to arrive with a stun gun to use on the teenager when 40-year-old Van Dyke showed up. The video, played repeatedly at trial, showed Van Dyke opening firing within seconds of arriving. Laquan spins, then crumples to the ground. Van Dyke continues to shoot when the 17-year-old is lying in the street. The knife recovered had a 3-inch blade folded back into the handle, prosecutors said. The officer claimed he believed his life was under threat, which is why he fired his gun.When he took the stand. Van Dyke told the jury the teenager had been advancing on him with the knife, with no expression on his face and eyes bugging out of his head. Van Dyke said he continued to shoot at the knife after Mr. McDonald was on the ground because he just wanted him to get rid of that knife. However, witness Jose Torres told the court that as he watched Van Dyke open fire on the teenager, he thought to himself, why the F are they still shooting him when he was on the ground? Police tried to withhold the dashcam footage for a year and Van Dyke was suspended without pay. Yesterday, the police officer showed no emotion as a jury convicted him of second-degree murder.He had been charged with first-degree murder, a charge that requires a finding that the shooting was unnecessary and unreasonable. The judge told jurors the second-degree charge was also available, requiring them to find Van Dyke believed his life was in danger, but that the belief was unreasonable. They opted for this lesser charge and also found him guilty of 16 counts of aggravated battery with a firearm, 1 count for each bullet he fired. He was cleared of official misconduct. Van Dyke was remanded in custody and faces between 4 and 20 years in jail for second-degree murder. The aggravated battery conviction could see an additional 6 to 30 years in jail.Probation as an option for second-degree murder. This is a victory for America, said Laquan's great-uncle and family spokesman Marvin Hunter. Laquan McDonald represents all of the victims that suffered what he suffered. The city of Chicago had already reached a $5 million, £3,810,000 civil settlement with the teenager's family. A jubilant crowd, some of whom told local media that they were in shock over the outcome, grew steadily in the city's downtown business district, demanding additional resignations of city officials and more police reform. The head of Chicago's police union, which funded Van Dyke's defense, has promised an appeal and slammed the jury for punishing an officer for doing his job. Van Dyke's lawyer Dan Herbert said his client was a sacrificial lamb by politicians who wanted to appease an angry public. The case became emblematic of decades of abuse in the Midwestern city, often targeted at the African-American population. After the shooting, there were months of protests and calls for resignations by city officials accused of cover-ups. The aftermath rallied the city's politics and led to significant changes within the police department. The city's police chief and lead prosecutor both lost their jobs. The city has been on edge in advance of the verdict, and city officials and business owners have beefed up security in expectation of protests. Whatever the verdict, trouble is expected in a city already struggling with the highest levels of gun crime and murder in the U.S.